Lesson 2, Understanding Variables and Expressions. Quick review of what you watched in the actual content of the lesson. Your new concepts, we took a look at what variables and constants are. Variables, again, each of the letters that represent a number in an algebraic expression. The constants are going to be considered the numeric values for each of those. You understand that there are also different ways in which we would label these as factors or coefficients. Coefficient is going to be that number that heads out a sequence of numbers, so it's the leading coefficient right here as an example. Factors, anything that's going to be multiplied together, so because all these are next to each other, they're considered factors. In example 2, you identified factors and coefficients and practiced labeling each of those given a example, a sequence of numbers. One thing to keep in mind when it comes into this fraction form is that there's actually a number above this fraction that's not written there in this case. The factors are 1/3 and y, as if you were multiplying 1/3 times y. You would multiply the numerator by the numerator, denominator by the denominator, which actually would look like 1/3 times y. The coefficient then is going to be the number in the front of that sequence, which is going to be 1/3. After that, you learned how to count the number of terms in an expression by separating them by plus or minus signs that are in the expression, not within the parentheses itself. You can count each term. So here's the example of one-term expressions, two-term expressions that are separated by that plus or minus sign, and here's a three-term expression. And then how to identify those in order: first term, second term, third term, fourth term. In example 3, you practiced identifying those terms just by simply writing them out. There wasn't any calculation. And in example 4, it actually applies what this looks like in an actual real-world problem in terms of a telephone company charging its customers for using their services. Might be like your cell phone bill. Here's what that looks like in terms of how mathematically it's organized. Let's take a look at complete our lesson practice problems for lesson 2. Identify the constants and variables in each expression. As we're looking at constants, we're going to look for numbers, 65, 12. As we're looking for variables, we're looking for our alphabetical or our letter representations of numbers, Q, R, S, and X. Letter B, 4GH minus 71YZ. We know that because they're next to each other, these are considered factors. This would be a coefficient, but that's the next example problem. Constants in this case, again, are the numbers for 71 variables, G, H, Y, Z. In example 2's practice problems here, let's identify the factors and coefficients in each expression. The factors are what are being multiplied together. Coefficients are going to be the numbers that are going to show up in that set or in that sequence. So what's being multiplied here? 17 times D times E times F. They're just written next to each other in algebra without having to write a multiplication symbol, an X or a dot in between each of those. Letter D, we've got our identifier here that something is a little bit different because it is a fraction problem or a division problem. You've got U and V in the denominator and in the numerator and 4 in the denominator. We know that the things that are being multiplied would be U and V because they're next to each other, and then this way in the problem is actually going to be division. So that's not considered a factor. U and V would be factors. If there's one other number that you're looking for, just because 4 is written down here doesn't mean that there's another number that's not written here that wouldn't change the problem at all. If I drew a 1 in right here, that would also mean that this is 1/4 as a fraction, and 1/4 could be written as a multiplication times U times V times 1/4. So U, V, and 1/4 would all be factors. The coefficient then would be 1/4. Letter E, -3 times S times T. All of those are factors. Our coefficient is -3. Letter F, A times B times C. All of those are factors. There is a coefficient or there isn't a coefficient. If there isn't one, I could write in a 1 right here at the beginning of this and say that, well, anything times 1 is itself, so it doesn't change the actual answer of the problem. So 1 would be our coefficient. It's another one of those trick problems. If there's not actually a number written there, you can assume that it's 1. If there's not a number written here, you can assume that 1 is in that numerator as well. G and H ask us to identify the terms in each expression. You'd simply say that this is the first term, this is the second term, and this is the third term. They're separated again by that plus or minus sign. So 1, 2, 3 terms in the expression, and in the order that they are is the first, second, and third. Letter H has the similar setup in which there are 1, 2, 3 terms. Therefore, I would identify this division problem with these numbers and variables as the first term. 18s is my second term, and 47j times k times l is my third term. Example 4 is that real-world application. Bill's bikes use the expression below to calculate rentals fees. He's obviously trying to figure out a way in which he can rent out the bike and then by the number of hours or the time that somebody is using it, collect more money. If you use something more, it's going to be more expensive. If you use something less, it's going to be less expensive. There's probably going to be a flat rate. That way, no matter what, he's making money on somebody using that rental service. Letter I says, how many terms are in the expression? Let's count the plus and minus signs. There's 2 that separate that, so it's 1, 2, 3 terms. Identify the constants. Constants, again, are going to be our numbers. 6.5, 3.25, and 0.75. Identify the variables. Variables are going to be the letters that represent numbers in an algebraic expression. We're going to try and find what those variables actually represent, but for now, we're just simply identifying. H is a variable, and B is a variable. Nice work. Your assignment for Lesson 2 can be found on your weekly checklist. Right here is the link to this video, but the practice problems that you're going to do are highlighted here. Practice problems 7 through 12, 14, 21 through 27, and 29. In the homework folder that was sent home for Tuesday, you can find that copy sheet. Please write your problem and the work down in the box that looks like this, and then write your answer way over in that side box for easy correcting and easy organizing of your work. Thanks for helping Mr. Shane out in that way. Again, your practice problems are listed right here. They're circled for you on that actual worksheet itself.